Open the gates! Na me be your prince!
My people, wetin go happen if pride no just destroy person, but wipe am completely from existence?
Open the gates. It is me, Azuka, your prince. Those were the words a broken man screamed into the unforgiving rain. But when the heavy iron doors finally creaked open, it was not a welcoming committee that met him. A tall palace guard stepped out, pushing him roughly into the dirt, claiming the king had no son, only a queen. And from the shadows of that grand entrance walked Nneka, the village claypot seller, now draped in royal silks. She looked down at the weeping man with nothing but silent pity before ordering the gates closed forever. My people, they say pride goes before a fall. But for Prince Azuka, his pride didn't just cause a fall, it erased him entirely from the memory of the living. Sit down, get comfortable, and listen carefully. Because this is the story of how a crown turned into dust. The Kingdom of Amari was a land of unmatched beauty and wealth, but a sickness lived within its palace walls. That sickness was Prince Azuka. He was a man who measured his royalty by how many people he could trample beneath his feet. On this day, he rode his horse furiously through the crowded market, entirely unbothered by the chaos he caused. An old widow, who had spent her last savings on pottery to feed her orphan grandchildren, couldn't move fast enough. The prince's horse crushed her entire stall into shards of clay, leaving her bruised and weeping in the dirt. When she begged for mercy, for just a single silver coin to rebuild her life, Azuka merely laughed. He tossed a single, worthless copper coin into the mud and told her that the poor were born to be stepped on, if only to keep royal sandals clean. He rode away, leaving the market in tears, completely unaware that the universe records every whisper of a broken heart. As King Egui grew frail, he begged his only son to choose a bride from the wealthiest families in the land. But Azuka rejected them all with biting insults, declaring that no woman in Amari was worthy of his shadow. Days later, while hunting near the sacred river, the prince encountered a young girl named Nneka. She was a simple village girl, kneeling by the water and humming an ancient melody while washing her plain clay pots. Unlike everyone else in the kingdom, when the prince approached, Nneka did not bow. She did not tremble. She simply stood up and looked him directly in the eye, stating that the river gave water to the prince and the slave alike, so she saw no reason to worship a mere visitor. Infuriated by her unshakable dignity, Azuka vowed to break her. He declared right then and there that he would marry her, not to give her a throne, but to force her to be his maidservant by day and his wife by night. He wanted to ensure she bowed to him every single morning. But Nneka merely looked at him and whispered a chilling truth: a house built entirely on smoke cannot withstand the wind. Weeks passed, and Nneka lived in the palace like a ghost. She refused the royal delicacies, eating only simple taproots, and she never let go of a small, unmarked clay pot with ancient symbols etched into its sides. Azuka watched her with growing anger, feeling mocked by her silence. Seeking answers, the prince visited Ogbuefi, the palace chief priest. But the moment the old priest threw his divining cowries, his face turned pale with horror. He grabbed Azuka's arm and warned him that Nneka's bloodline was the custodian of the ancient river oath. The small pot she carried held the spiritual balance of Amari's soil itself. The priest begged the prince to send her back to the river, warning that the earth had had enough of his cruelty. But Azuka, blinded by his own arrogance, threw the priest's warnings aside, vowing to show the entire kingdom that even the river gods bowed to his crown. In the dead of night, when the palace was completely silent, Azuka crept into Nneka's room to commit an unforgivable act. He wanted to prove his absolute ownership over her. As he lifted the sacred clay pot, Nneka's eyes snapped open, but they were no longer human. They glowed with a blinding, milky white light. She warned him to drop it, telling him some things were too heavy for a mortal man to carry. But Azuka sneered, raising the vessel high, and slammed it onto the marble floor. My people, the pot did not shatter. Instead, a deep, booming sound echoed through the palace, and thick, freezing blue river mist began to pour directly from the floorboards. Azuka tried to run, but his legs were frozen solid to the ground. Nneka stood up as the room temperature plummeted, her voice echoing with the strength of 1,000 ancestors. She told him that the earth had given his family a crown to protect the people, but because he used it to trample them, the ground had come to claim its death. The freezing mist consumed him completely, drowning out his cries for help. When Azuka woke up, his face was pressed into the freezing mud outside the palace walls. His fine clothes were gone, replaced by filthy rags. He ran to the gates, pounding on the iron and screaming for his father, King Egwe. But the guards simply laughed, pushing him back into the dirt, calling him a mad beggar. They told him King Egwe had died 10 long years ago, and that the kingdom had been peacefully ruled by Queen Nneka ever since. They insisted Amari had never had a prince named Azuka. Horrified, the young man looked down into a puddle of rainwater. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. His handsome features and royal birthmark were entirely gone, replaced by the weathered face of a common beggar. He looked up one last time and saw Queen Nneka standing on the high balcony, looking down with profound sadness before turning away. The gate slammed shut, locking him out of the life he had stolen for granted. My people, Prince Azuka did not die that night. The spirits did not take his life, they took his existence. He lived for 30 more years as a nameless beggar, sitting in the very same market mud where he had once crushed the old widow's pottery. Every single day, he had to stretch out his wrinkled hands, begging the poor for a single piece of bread just to survive the night. How many of us are like Prince Azuka today? How many times have we allowed a small promotion at work, a little money in our bank accounts, or a position of authority to make us look down on the quiet people around us? We forget that everything we possess is just a temporary loan from the Creator. Pay attention to how you treat people who have absolutely nothing to offer you. Because the universe can turn the prince into the beggar in the blinking of an eye. If Azuka's story shook your heart tonight, then you know this channel is your home. Hit that subscribe button right now. And leave me a comment below. Tell me, did the prince get the justice he deserved, or was his punishment too heavy? I read every single comment. Until the next story, stay safe, stay wise, and remember, never break a pot whose depth you do not know. Bye for now.